last 3 hours, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis admitted to a personal relationship with an outside prosecutor she appointed to manage the election interference case against former President Donald Trump. In a 176-page court filing, Willis said she and Nathan Wade developed a relationship in 2022, but that there was no relationship prior to his appointment as special prosecutor. Willis denies any claims of misconduct and says there was no evidence that the relationship between her and Wade had prejudiced the case. We'll have more on this story, including one legal expert's take on the impact on the election interference case that's coming.
Hi everyone, so we're back for another video, and today I want to cover a story out of Atlanta surrounding Fani Willis. Now, there are quite a few gems that I believe we all can take from this situation, but I especially want my college girlies, my quote-unquote boss chicks, and all of the women that are a part of this community that are climbing their respective career ladders, whether that's corporate or entrepreneurship, to pay very close attention. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now, for those of you who are unaware, Fani Willis is the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia. Fulton County pretty much covers the vast majority of the city of Atlanta. And not only is she the district attorney, she is the first woman to hold this position in office. A district attorney is the highest level of a prosecutor elected or appointed to represent the state. And they lead a staff of prosecuting attorneys that work with them on various criminal cases. The daughter of John Floyd, a criminal attorney and one of the founding members of the Black Panther Party, Fani was born in Inglewood, California, grew up in Washington, D.C., studied political science and graduated cum laude from Howard University, and then moved to Atlanta and graduated with her Juris Doctor from Emory Law. So Atlanta is very unique in the sense of demographics. Not only is it predominantly Black, but you can find just about every class of Black people, from poor to middle class to upper class to millionaires and superstars. So to be a Black woman and the first Black woman district attorney on top of that in a major city in the South, a place that was once one of the leaders of the civil rights movement and MLK's hometown, Fani could not have picked a better place to settle in as a Black woman. Fani's position as DA in Atlanta is a very big deal. And with all of this power comes great responsibility. Fani is well known to be hard-nosed and no nonsense. And with Atlanta's increasing crime rates over the last few years, many believed her to be a good fit to help crack down on crime and provide tougher sentences for criminals. In 2014, as an assistant DA at the time, Fani's most prominent case, and the case that put a spotlight on her, was the Atlanta public school system cheating scandal. And the easiest way to explain the cheating scandal was that test coordinators, teachers, and principals colluded to falsify state-administered standardized tests. And the reason why this case was so big was because many of the community leaders did not like the idea of teachers being charged under the RICO Act, a statute famous for bringing down mafia members, especially because these teachers were significantly underpaid, overworked, and pressured to have high test scores in a public school system that is home to many underprivileged kids and broken homes.
After they were convicted on charges typically reserved for mobsters, he threw the book at them, teachers, principals among them, handing down lengthy prison sentences for their roles in a massive cheating scandal in which standardized test scores at underperforming schools were inflated. The judge told them the conspiracy harmed thousands of children. Our chief education correspondent, Rahema Ellis, shows us how it all played out.
Tense courtroom, Judge Jerry Baxter imposed harsh sentences on 8 former Atlanta public school educators convicted of racketeering, conspiring to fix standardized test scores to improve results.
There were thousands of children that were harmed in this thing. This is not a victimless crime.
3 disgraced educators, former teachers and administrators, were sentenced to 20 years, serving 7 in prison, the rest on probation. The others, including a principal and elementary school teachers, were sentenced to 5 years, serving 1 to 2 of them behind bars. Emotions ran high.
How can you say that?
As the sentences came down.
You sit down, I'm going to put you in jail. If you yell at me, point at me.
It was painful for everyone, including the judge. The judge heard from dozens of character witnesses pleading for leniency.
Have mercy on my daughter, please.
Known as a tenacious prosecutor, aggressive, and a good litigator, Fani has a reputation for being able to present complex cases due to her courtroom demeanor and style. Fani's prosecution of the Atlanta public school system and subsequent convictions of 11 out of the 12 defendants under Georgia's RICO Act monikered her as the RICO Queen, to which she became well known in Atlanta's criminal scene for pushing high-profile criminal cases under RICOs. Fani's current high-profile RICOs are notably Wife and Lucci, rapper and Blood Gang member who just recently accepted a plea deal of 20 years in exchange for having 12 counts against him dismissed, and instead pleaded guilty to 1 count of violating the Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. Along with rapper and Blood Gang member Young Thug, whose 27 members of YSL were charged in a sweeping 56-count indictment under Fani's RICO. Unbeknownst to many, both RICOs have similarities and connecting links, to include the shooting death of a high-ranking Inglewood family Blood Gang member, Big Nut, who was gunned down at a barbershop in Atlanta. Big Nut was well-known and well-connected in Atlanta, and I dive into how both Lucci and Thug are connected to Big Nut in Proof 2. So if you have not seen it already, please be sure to check it out. Fani's newest high-profile RICO, and probably the pinnacle of all RICOs, is the indictment of former President Donald Trump and 18 of his allies who are charged with conspiring to overturn the 2020 presidential election. As you all know, Trump lost the presidential election to Biden, and according to the indictment, he and other defendants refused to accept the loss and knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump by creating pressure campaigns to create more votes, harassing state election workers, creating false claims of fraud, and appointing new electors that will favor Trump. And while former presidents have been caught up in their fair share of scandals, none have been charged with a RICO, which makes this case so significant. Atlanta's first Black woman DA hit the over-tanned political mobster, aka Mr. Make America Great Again, with a RICO, which automatically changes the trajectory of the playing field and the level in which she must play the game, along with ensuring all items in her glass house are in order, as this RICO is the RICO that places a national spotlight on her. Now, y'all already know Wild Heart Waves is going to pull the receipts, and the tea is piping hot. So get situated and comfortable so I can break everything down. So Fani hired 3 attorneys to assist her with the RICO against Trump. Special Prosecutor John Floyd, who is a premier expert on the RICO statute and was retained by Fani for his deep expertise in racketeering cases. A familiar face, Floyd was also used in the state's closing arguments in the Atlanta public schools cheating scandal. Special Prosecutor Anna Cross, a 20-year private practice attorney who was routinely brought into cases at the trial court stage for complex pretrial evidentiary issues, which simply means that she is good at arguing the relevance of evidence the prosecution is trying to admit in a case, whether it be material or witnesses. And then lastly, the lead prosecutor, Nathan Wade, who specializes in personal injury, family, and domestic disputes. With a decade of his career as an associate municipal judge in Marietta, Georgia, to which he would have been presiding over cases such as ordinance violations, issuing criminal warrants, misdemeanor shopping, and marijuana possession. And so one of the arguments surrounding Wade's appointment as the lead prosecutor in Trump's case is that he did not have the experience to qualify him for the role. Wade previously covered low-level criminal cases, and Trump, along with his co-defendant Michael Roman, argued that there was no evidence of him working any major political corruption cases. So in 2015, Nathan Wade says that his marriage to his former wife, Jocelyn Wade, was broken, but the plan was for them to stay together until the children were out of school. A year or so later, he hires his former friend and law firm partner, Terrence Bradley, to be his divorce attorney. The divorce stalls out with Wade's wife of 26 years, citing that he was dragging his feet and failing to cooperate by providing basic information requested by her divorce attorney. Jocelyn Wade, a stay-at-home mom of nearly 30 years, sought alimony and was attempting to negotiate what she felt like was a fair settlement in their divorce. However, Nathan was unwilling to provide any financial documents. November 1st, 2021, Fani Willis offers Nathan Wade the role as lead prosecutor. He agrees and signs the contract. The very next day, on November 2nd, Nathan Wade files for divorce. And then the next day, November 3rd, Nathan Wade requests to have his divorce records sealed. And in most cases, divorce hearings and records are public. So Nathan sealing these records was done in an effort to maintain privacy. Jocelyn reports that Nathan all of a sudden is traveling here and there, blowing a bag, and left her as a housewife with 2 kids and little to no means of financial support, while simultaneously spending tens of thousands of dollars per month on a very lavish lifestyle. And through discovery, she finally gets her hands on Nathan's credit card statements. And what do you know? He's been on trips in and out of the country with Atlanta's first black woman DA, Fani Willis. And the receipts hit both of their names listed on plane tickets to Cali and Miami and the Caribbean. Fani and Nathan have been worldwide. So Jocelyn says, okay then, Miss DA, since you all up and down these bank statements and receipts and since 1 + 1 = 2, let me go ahead and subpoena you to testify at my divorce proceeding because I'm sure there's more where that came from. And so Fani gets hit with a subpoena to testify in Nathan and Jocelyn's divorce in the midst of her investigating Trump for RICO by the wife of the man she hired to serve as the lead prosecutor. Messy. And Fani responds to Jocelyn's subpoena, and in so many words saying, this ain't got nothing to do with me, by filing an emergency protective order, citing that there is no reason Jocelyn will want her to testify other than to harass her, and that pillow talking Nathan says his marriage was broken because Jocelyn had cheated on him. Fani goes on to imply that Jocelyn is working with Michael Roman because the same day that Fani was subpoenaed, Michael Roman requested to have the Wade's divorce matter unsealed. Fani wants her subpoena to testify quashed as she has nothing to offer and has no knowledge of any matter that is relevant to their divorce. Jocelyn comes back and says, Miss Ma'am, you're not getting off that easy because if Nathan was pillow talking to you about me allegedly cheating, then you have intimate information about my marriage, even if it is false. Your new hire, Nathan, failed to share the substantial income that he received through his appointment as lead prosecutor. And then 2 days after he accepted the role, wanted our divorce sealed. Furthermore, Ms. DA, y'all all on trips and it's clear that you have been a travel partner of my husband for quite some time. So I need your deposition to figure out the details surrounding your romantic affair, as it appears to be no other reason for you to be traveling with him like this apart from a romantic relationship. And Ms. DA, your attempt for a protective order will only make sense if you had no personal knowledge of the matter, but clearly you do since you were in a romantic relationship with him and on trips with him before or after the divorce was even filed. And lastly, since you know so much about my marriage, Nathan was the one that cheated and stopped investing in our marriage, which caused me to disconnect from him. I regrettably reconnected with an old friend through social media, but exchanging text messages was the extent of our contact. Nathan and I continued to work on our marriage, which is why he didn't file for divorce until years later.
So you're saying that you did not have sexual relationships with anyone outside of your marriage, and the period of separation is during the period that you're answering the question to this interrogatory, correct, sir?
I'm saying during the course of my marriage, I did not have sexual relations to anyone, and this answers no.
Well, again, Your Honor,
you can proceed, Mr. Mayor.
We need a yes or no. Let's just get down to it. Did you or did you not, by May the 30th, 2023, have had sexual relations with Miss Willis, yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what you did is you answered no to that question, didn't you, or none, correct?
I didn't answer no to the question you just asked. I answered no to the interrogatory question.
And the interrogatory stands that you answered as a pleading in a civil proceeding, your divorce case, right?
Yes.
Now, let's stop here for a second. Why does all of this matter? Why does it matter that Fani was sleeping with a married man that she hired to be the lead prosecutor in Trump's RICO? And outside of the obvious, it's because of the appearance of impropriety. The implication that she hired a man that has never led a high-profile criminal prosecution, has never even prosecuted a felony, solely because she was in a romantic relationship with him. Even if that was not the case, an appearance of impropriety is behavior that would undermine public confidence in the judicial system and behavior that would lead reasonable minds to believe that there was an unfair benefit. So even if Fani did not hire him because she was sleeping with him, even if she felt like he had all of the credentials that she was looking for, even if there was absolutely no way that she could benefit from this arrangement, that doesn't matter. It's the view of how it looks, the view of impropriety. And that is one thing that Trump, Michael Roman, and their attorneys knew before they ever even got involved with this. This is how it looks when you change the trajectory of the playing field. Welcome to the big dog lead, Miss DA. Checkmate. Because even if nothing comes out of this goose hunt, we would have still managed to smear Fani's name and reputation through the view of impropriety. Because all press ain't good press. And when ish goes south, regardless of the details, people are more inclined to distance themselves. And the funny thing about all this is that white folks been doing this. This is a game that they know all too well. Rigged games, backdooring, political mobsters, triple crossing, games designed in their favor, finessing, nepotism, unethical relationships is their forte, and politics is their playground. So what are we talking about? Because I thought what was good for the goose was good for the gander. Now, throughout this whole ordeal, and despite being called to testify, Nathan Wade's former law firm partner and divorce attorney, Terrence Bradley, has exercised that any communications he had with Nathan Wade would be covered by attorney-client privilege. However, the whole time, he was funneling information over to Michael Roman's attorney, Ashley Merchant. And then Ashley used these same text messages in her case against Fani in court. Messy. So Ashley Merchant and Terrence Bradley, they knew each other. They knew some of the same attorneys, and they often ran into each other in court from time to time. And so one day, Ashley and Terrence run into each other and strike up a conversation. Now, around this time, Ashley is already representing Michael Roman for election interference. They discuss Nathan Wade, and Terrence drops a bombshell in that he does not like how Nathan has abandoned his responsibilities as a husband and a man once he met Fani and they began messing around. And all it took was for Ashley to pry a little bit, and Terrence gave it all up, which tells me that he had some other motives. Now, let's get into these text messages, child. So, September 2023, Ashley texts Terrence and asks if he knows anyone who she could get an affidavit from about the affair, to which he responds that no one would freely burn that bridge. January 2024, Ashley asks, do you think it started before she hired him? And Terrence responds, absolutely. It started when she left the DA's office and was a judge in South Fulton, and that they met at a municipal court conference. And again, this conference he is referring to was in 2019. Ashley and Terrence continue the conversation and discuss all of the places Fani and Nathan traveled together, to include a trip to California to visit Fani's daughter after she flunked out of FAMU and moved across the country to relocate. Ashley goes on to ask Terrence whether Nathan has ever prosecuted a felony, to which he responds, never in his life. Later that month, Ashley asks, my main question has always been, how did Sonya feel about Fani taking her man? To which Terrence responds, not sure how she felt or feels. Her and Nathan are extremely close now. It started romantic, but when I left, it was more brotherly, sisterly. But occasionally they would mess around. And the Sonya that Ashley is referring to is Deputy District Attorney Sonya Allen, who works under Fani and runs the anti-corruption unit in the District Attorney's office. So, Wade, you are slanging D all up and down the office, I see. And catch this, in 2020, Sonya led an investigation into inmate deaths at Cobb County Jail, and she retained Nathan Wade's law firm to review cases that had uses of excessive force, deadly force, discrimination, and neglect. And although Sonya had previously reported that his firm did the case pro bono, invoices showed that he billed at $550 an hour for his services. Regardless, it is clear that Nathan Wade has a habit of mixing business with pleasure, and I question whether any of this is strategic.
She became DA January 1st, 2021, but she had a transition team leading up to that. So, and Mr. Wade was in charge of her transition team. So Mr. Bradley told me all of that. We met for about an hour. Said that they had been together. They met at this conference. Nathan was still married, and Mr. Bradley was upset because of what happened in the divorce. He was upset because they were still married, the Wades were still married, and he essentially just left her after meeting Miss Willis and dropping the kids off at college. So.
And Bradley was Wade's attorney in that divorce action you're talking about? Okay.
Yes, I didn't know that at the time.
But they were law partners?
They had been,
Okay.
yes.
Did not like the way Wade had treated his wife?
He did not.
But he represented him?
He did not like the
Okay.
way he had treated his wife. He didn't like what was happening in the divorce proceeding, yes.
Okay.
And, I remember specifically him saying, I handle my business, things like that. Like, that I don't leave my wife without alimony. Because this, and we talked about it. Miss Wade had been a stay-at-home mom for, they'd been married almost 30 years. And literally it was right after they dropped their youngest off at college that he said, move out,
Now, impropriety alone is not enough to have Fani removed from the case, which is why the money matters. The finances matter. The real way and the only way for Trump and Michael Roman and their attorneys to get Fani off this RICO is to prove that she financially benefited from her arrangement with hiring Nathan Wade, which would have resulted in a conflict of interest. This is why peeling back the layers on both of their travel and day-to-day expenses were done.
Once the motion was filed, did you meet with Mr. Wade and talk to him about the motion that I filed to disqualify you?
On January, this first January motion?
Yes.
I don't know if you could say talked about. I probably had some choice words about some of the things that you said that were dishonest within this motion. So I don't know that it was a conversation. As you know, Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much.
Okay, but my question was, did you have a conversation with
I
him?
didn't have a substantive conversation.
You did not?
I read this motion, skimmed it more so, and I've probably said some choice things to him about some of the lies that were told.
Okay.
And
that's
Ms. Merchant, that's okay. I can handle it. Ms. Willis, I'll ask you just listen to the answer, or excuse me, the question, and keep the answers confined to the question as best you can. I think you'll have more than enough ample opportunity on when the state.
Well, it's highly offensive when someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them, and I take exception to it.
All right, well, Ms. Willis.
I have a lot of guilt about this time period in my life. Let me tell you why. But yes, it was a lonely time.
Okay.
I was very appreciative to the citizens for giving me this responsibility and this duty. But what I very, very quickly learned is that this is a very isolating job, and 2021 was a lonely time. I turned 50 in 2021. That's probably one of the worst birthdays I've ever had. I spent it alone. So I have a clear recollection of 2021 being lonely.
didn't ask about living.
But you put in your, while we're talking about professionalism, she put in 3 different documents. He lived with me.
Full opportunity to respond.
And
filed that with the court.
In 2019.
He's never been to South Fulton. In 2019, I lived in South Fulton. He has never been to my residence in 2019, ever, not once.
In 2019, he's never been to your residence, any place.
I lived in my home in South Fulton before I started getting the threats that were here, a house I paid for with my own sweat and tears. I'm no longer able to live there. But in 2019, I did. And in the 2 months of 2019 that I knew Mr. Wade, 3 months, the beginning of October, all of November, and all of December, Mr. Wade never came to my house in South Fulton. I keep money in my house. The amounts of money I gave Mr. Wade, it was never that serious. I don't think I've ever handed him more than $2,500 in a reimbursement. So we're not talking about $20,000 in cash. I don't have $20,000 in cash right now. The most I ever gave him, I know I gave him $2,500 when we went to Belize, because we went to one hotel and then we went to a second hotel. That $2,500 I actually gave him while we were still in Belize. I know that the Aruba trip, the one that you described with his mom, I think I gave him about $2,000 for that trip for like total.
California? When you all went, or did you have 2 trips to California?
My daughter doesn't live in California.
Did she ever live in California?
I'm not discussing to you the location of my child.
So how many times did you go with Mr. Wade to California?
Once.
And you all stayed in Napa Valley and he paid for the plane tickets and the hotel?
He paid for the plane tickets and the hotel.
And what did you pay for on that trip?
I gave him much less cash that time, probably $400 or $500, and then I paid for a bunch of stuff. I think we did 2 different wine tours that you do, which are pretty expensive.
2022 disclosure form did not list any of the thousands and thousands of dollars that Mr. Wade paid for on trips that you were on. Isn't that correct?
That's because Mr. Wade was paid that money back, or he was paid due to the fact that I bought the plane ticket or I paid for the hotel. There were never money that he gave me. That wasn't the nature of our relationship. You know, there's so many men, and Mr. Wade is one of them, where the nature of the relationship is they're just paying a woman. The nature of our relationship is companionship and friendship. Despite the way people would like to paint certain women, it's just not true.
Final question. And not a single solitary documentary piece of evidence showing that you have withdrawn the cash to pay back.
That's not accurate. Interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No.
Sure.
But I'm sure we'll talk about it further.
No, we're not going to talk about it further.
All right, no back and forth. Let's sit down. Next question.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial. So
Judge McAfee, who presided over the hearing, found that Ashley Merchant, Steve Sadow, and the rest of the attorneys did not prove that there was a true conflict of interest in Nathan Wade and Fani's relationship. However, he did make it clear that Fani had a tremendous lapse in judgment, given the high standard that prosecutors are held to, and that he felt her testimony was handled in a very unprofessional manner. McAfee also ruled that Nathan Wade would have to step down to address the appearance of impropriety, or Fani would have to step aside. Within hours of this decision, Nathan Wade formally tendered his resignation. Since then, Trump and the crew have appealed the decision, which is now on its way up to the Georgia Court of Appeals, and Nathan Wade is allegedly still up to his old shenanigans, alleging that he no longer has the income to pay the original amount he agreed to in alimony now that he has stepped down from Trump's case. According to Jocelyn, Nathan has refused to make good on the out-of-court divorce agreement he struck in order to avoid testifying in court about his affair with Fani. He is also refusing to hand over child support payments for their 2 kids. Jocelyn has since hit back through her attorneys, saying he is a $500,000 lie and there is enough money in his account to start those payments. So next topic, sir. Now, in the end, the only people who know the real truth behind the details and the timeline of their relationship is Fani and Nathan. And unfortunately, a lot of people caught strays and were dragged into this mess. And the one question that remains in the forefront of my mind is, how did Fani benefit from her arrangement with Nathan Wade? In what way did Nathan add value to her life? And while momentarily he likely offered her companionship and the desire that all women long for, at the end, Fani truly got nothing out of her relationship with him but sex, stress, public humiliation, all of her dirty laundry aired, her daughter catching a stray about flunking out of college, all while paying her half on all of their trips, paying for dinner dates, and doing it big on a lavish birthday trip for this married man that she still did not end up with in the long run. So what did Wild Heart Waves take from this situation? Number one, the obvious. Taxpayer dollars were wasted on this mess of a hearing. I think that Ashley Merchant and Steve Sadow both knew that they did not have true evidence to support a conflict of interest, but just going through this process will require Fani to be placed into the hot seat. And this hot seat would be used to forecast impropriety. So let's leave it up to society to make their own decision about what they believe did or did not happen. As long as we can cast a shadow of doubt, we'll let the world be the judge and the jury. jury. And just like Fani said, she's not the one on trial. Trump and his allies are for trying to steal the election. But again, that was the whole point of this anyway, to move the goalposts from the real issue at hand. And once you cast a shadow of doubt, everything else is up for grabs. The Fani smear campaign was more about putting her reputation on trial and less about any viable paper trail that Trump's attorneys would be able to find. You see, it's one thing for Fani to go after teachers. It's one thing for her to go after Wyeth and Lucci and Young Thug. But it's another to go after former president and overtanned political mobster Donald Trump. And one thing that I often recognize is that black folks be real naive as to how this game goes. Rigged game. See, in this level of the game, anything goes. And it gets real nasty. But most importantly, it was never designed in our favor. These folks been playing it the corporate way. So for Fani to not think about her glass house, for her to not think that the glass house needed to be in order, that some surveillance was not about to be put on her, receipts was not about to be pulled, that digging into her family life, her ex-husband, her kids was not going to happen, for any loophole, any misappropriation, any conflict of interest, slip up was not going to be sought after, and any subpoena to testify in a divorce proceeding with a man that she was sleeping with and hired to help her go after Trump was not going to be found. She must have forgot what type of game she was playing. Number 2, Fani has to take accountability, and she has to hold this L with respect to her bedroom activities being put on Front Street. And the reason why she got to hold this L is because she allowed a man that she was sleeping with to infiltrate everything that she has worked so hard for in the last 30 plus years. And not just any man. Make sure you catch it. A married man. And not just any married man. A married man that was in the midst of a messy divorce with his wife that took close to 8 years to finalize. And now again, I notice that we love to complicate the definition of a man being married, oftentimes in an effort to not take accountability. A man that is married is a man that is not legally divorced from his wife. And I believe that this situation is a prime example as to what I have said in the past about married men being nothing but trouble. It doesn't matter if he says they don't live together, they're sleeping in separate bedrooms, they're just staying for the kids. It doesn't matter how long they've been separated. A man that is married is a man that is not legally divorced from his wife. And I don't know how many situations it will take for the girls to recognize this, but as I stated in Guma, men that are married are a waste of time, and the majority of the time, their messiness, their sloppiness will blow up your spot. Married men still have their ships anchored with their wives, meaning they are financially and as a result legally tied to these women until the judge signs off on the divorce decree. Boundary commandment number 8, never deal with married men. Now, Miss DA also knew the type of man that she was dealing with, and while we don't know the whole story, we have received sneak peeks into Nathan's character throughout this entire trial. Mr. Irretrievably Broken made it clear that he saw nothing wrong with seeing other women because him and his wife were on the rocks. But what I see is a bigger issue, and it's the fact that his wife supported him as a stay-at-home mom for 30 years, birthed his kids, and nurtured their home for him to leave her left holding the bag when it was all said and done. And his shady dealings with his own kids and lack of support after he was booted from Trump's RICO furthermore shows us the type of man that he is. So good for Miss Jocelyn Wade and keeping the pressure on him to produce those bank statements and spending habits to get what she felt like is fair and rightfully owed. The bottom line is that if Fani's glass house did not include sleeping with the married man that she hired, Trump and the crew would have had to work a lot harder. Jocelyn's subpoena to Fani to testify in her divorce is what tipped Michael Roman's attorneys off about Fani and Nathan's relationship. This alone was the primary reason that Fani ultimately was put on the stand for questioning. So when we get rid of all the smoke and mirrors, a man ultimately sabotaged this. And number 3, never mix business with pleasure. One rule that every woman should have as they are navigating life is to never mix business with pleasure. Business is business and pleasure is pleasure. And the majority of time, mixing the two is a sure way for someone to get hurt. Now, hear me well. If you give a man an opening for pleasure, or any inkling that he can get his foot in the door when you are dealing with him on a business matter, he will surely take it. Yes, you can meet a man through a business network and hit it off, and things can pan out into something serious. But what I am referring to right now is a man that is in close proximity to you business-wise, or your subordinate, your lawn guy, your tax preparer, your business partner, your boss, your co-worker, and any man that you have hired to do a service for you. Business is business and pleasure is pleasure. And a lot of times women will play themselves by thinking that these men really care about them when they don't. You are not special half of the time. Many of these men are used to doing this, and many of them want to conquer you to fulfill some type of fantasy or to get the ups on you, the upper hand. A lot of times these men are seeking some type of advantage. There is something that they can gain by dealing with you. There is something that they can gain by mixing business with the pleasure. And they already know that once pleasure gets involved, the business is off the table. So they have the upper hand in the equation. Women should never mix business with pleasure. And y'all know what I'm about to say. I don't care how fine he is. In a business setting, the energy that you want to give off to a man at all times is an air of respect, that they must approach you and handle you with respect at all times. But when men notice you doing too much, you talking too much, you dressing unprofessionally, you seeking validation, being thirsty, the light switch goes off in their head like ding. Business is off the table. Business is off the table. It's too easy. When you remain focused on the business, when you redirect any slight move of them trying to get their foot in the door, when you stay grounded on the topic at hand, on the goal at hand, you create an air of respect around yourself. If he wants to approach you when there is no longer a business opportunity that you all are engaged in, great. But until then, until that actually happens, it's straight business around here. Never mix business with pleasure. Number 4, career-driven women tend to have the book smarts, but not so much common sense when it comes to men. Now, hear me out. For the longest, one of the unspoken rules in many households have said that the boys will never be held accountable for their behavior, so they can do whatever, they can run amok, play on women and their feelings, rarely face consequences for their actions and still get rewarded. But the girls, they must focus in school, keep their legs closed, go far in life, obtain all the accolades and the degrees. So while the men are playing on the women are not learning the game. And there's a different type of pressure that is placed on Black women to succeed and to do well academically. And while there is nothing wrong with Black women wanting to be the best that they can in school and their chosen career paths, there must be a balance. If you are a woman that ultimately wishes to date men, be in a relationship with one, marry and settle down, you have to fully understand what comes with it. And since you are not a man, you have to learn men and you have to know how to navigate with them to your benefit. Everything you practice on a daily basis, you become better at. The harder you study for the LSAT, the higher chance of you becoming an attorney. The harder you study at the NCLEX, the higher chance of you becoming a nurse. Likewise, the harder you study for the MCAT, the higher chance of you getting into medical school. The same way you study academically is the same way you have to study and learn men. And the best way to become good at knowing how to operate with them, knowing when to walk away and knowing when you are being finessed, is by hands-on experience, by going on dates, by talking to them on the phone, by getting in their mind, by observing their habits and patterns, by watching how they move, and by listening to Wild Heart Waves. And so many women eat, sleep, breathe their careers. They put a ton of hours in academically and career-wise, but significantly lack socially. They lack the ability to hold conversations with men. They feel uncomfortable with navigating in the dating arena and truly figuring out what works for them. And men can smell this like sharks smell blood in water. You can have all the confidence in the courtroom and operating on that patient, but it still does not prepare you for dealing with and dating men. Career-driven women must have a balance in both their professional lives, and they must find the time to learn themselves and get out here and get some hands-on experience with these men. Because the first one you meet and the first one that gives you a compliment, the first one that gives you that good D is not going to be the one, my sis. And lastly, number 5, piggybacks on number 4. A man should never be able to sabotage everything that you have worked hard for. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in college, own your own business, an attorney, accountant, a bartender. No man that you meet should be able to knock you off your pivot. A man should not be able to sabotage all of those years, those hours, and all of the blood, sweat, and tears it took for you to get to the place that you are. No man should be able to sabotage all of your hard work and success. And the more confident that you are with navigating with men, the easier it will be able to recognize those key indicators as to when it's time to exit stage left. In Fani's case, I don't think she truly vetted him, because the vetting would have disqualified him from day one. She should have left him in 2019 at that municipal court conference. And I find it hard to believe that she never got an inkling that he came with nothing but trouble. But as she stated, being the DA was more than she expected. It was a very isolating job. The death threats, having to move out of her home, relocating her family, riding around with security detail 24/7, her being overworked and lonely would make it easier for any woman to go against their better judgment with a man. And the reason I have empathy for Fani in this situation is because her following her goals and pursuing her career and working her way up into this position as DA is a double-edged sword. These type of jobs push you further and further into your masculine energy on a daily basis. If Fani gets perceived as weak, she won't be in her position for long. She won't be as successful, and these jobs make it difficult for women to live a life of leisure. Yes, Fani might have been paid well, she might have had the status and the power, and she, like all women, still long for desire. And given the nature of her job, it is hard to balance this with all of the work and the hours that she has to put in. She is literally sleeping, breathing, and eating law. And on the flip side, I can see why many women are starting to turn the gears and revert back to not wanting to overwork themselves for the sake of money and success. Now, while we all can agree that Fani could have handled the situation a lot better, while she could have been more prepared, while she lacked vetting, while she had a lapse in judgment over a married man, while she forgot what type of game she was playing, I still need to give Fani her flowers. Her accomplishments required discipline, sound decision making, and the ability to stand on all 10 in a world that was never designed for her, which, trust me, is no easy feat. And so I would much rather the first Black woman district attorney of Atlanta, Georgia, to be one of the role models for the current generation of women that are longing for one, instead of this mixed bag we're working with, which includes doing it for the gram, follow the leader, self-esteem and self-respect on the floor, hypersexuality, and a lack of good character, empathy, and compassion. Thank you for making it this far with me. Many of you all have been asking for longer videos. Now, y'all know I'm ready to hear what y'all think. What are your key takeaways from the situation? Until next time.